You're listening to the Confident Creative Podcast. I'm your host, Carrie Gavin, former professional photographer turned professional encourager. I'm an intuitive life and business mentor focused on strengthening courage and confidence for heart-centered creatives. These heart-centered creatives desire to make an impact and an income through sharing their heart with the world. This podcast is dedicated to helping us creatives activate more courage within ourselves so we can experience more memories, achieve more milestones, and make more money. In addition to empowering stories, this show will also include practical, actionable strategies from thought leaders, influencers, impact makers, and my own personal experience. If you are passionate about the areas of intentionally living, prioritizing passion, choosing courage, as well as some soulful business strategy, spirituality, and some self-mastery, you, my friend, are in the right place. You ready to play? Hey, friends. I'm so excited to be with you today. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me, your energy with me. I know you have a million places that you could invest that, and I'm so grateful that I get to spend some time in your ears. So, took a little bit of a break for the last couple weeks, but we are back in the game. I have some amazing episodes coming up. But this intermission, this supplement for the soul, is something that is near and dear to my heart as I often speak about cultivating our courage and our confidence. And the flip side of that is navigating the currents of fear and really knowing how to walk with fear as opposed to fighting against it. And so one of the tools that's been really useful for me that I just want to offer for you today as you're going about your business is recognizing that fear, in my experience, comes in two flavors. So we have rational fear and irrational fear. Now, a lot of people like to talk about feel the fear and do it anyway. And to a certain extent, I get it. But the other thing I want to remind you of is that inner guidance system that we have, that inner compass that is always on and always active, it actually serves a purpose for us. And the whole overcoming fear, it's a little bit of a slippery slope for me. I think that there are ways that we have to be open and we have to be mindful and we have to recognize when we're falling into fear that's keeping us apart from evolving and growing and expanding. And also when there's a real actual fear and it's serving us, right? It's keeping us safe. And that's a good thing. So here's what I want to offer you. Fear has one flavor, being rational. Now, this rational fear comes from a primal place in our brain where it tells us, hey, you're going to get hit by a moving train if you stay on the train tracks. This fear is to get you to move off the train tracks. That is actually really useful. That's awesome. Thank you for not letting me walk off a cliff while I'm visiting the Hawaii Islands and traveling up and hiking over waterfalls, right? Fear is actually a good thing. It can be our friend if we know what's useful and the way to navigate it, right? So when we have this rational fear, it's designed to keep us safe. It's designed to keep us, our brain is constantly scanning on how to predict and protect. And that's really good. There are physical things that we actually do need to be afraid of. And thousands of years ago, this indicator was going off when there was, a saber-toothed tiger that could be outside of our cave. And it was signaling to us, hey, you should probably get out of here. You're going to get eaten. That's the rational fear. Now, the irrational fear, as man has evolved, as our brains have evolved, this piece hasn't quite evolved as quickly. Now, what irrational fear often looks like is when you feel this thing that I call being scarce-sighted. What is scarce-sighted? Scarce-sighted is when you feel a little bit excited and a little bit scared. That's the way that I interpret this sort of irrational fear. That means it's something that's going to be a little bit uncomfortable because P.S., you've probably never done it before, and your brain is still trying to keep you safe. Now, this can play out in all kinds of ways. This can play out in you're going to make an offer to your client or potential client. You're going to start a new program. You're going to, do something you've never done before. And P.S., this doesn't just happen in our business, right? Like we talk a lot about business stuff here and in the community over at the Confident Creative Collective on Facebook, but this happens in all areas of our life, right? Maybe it's that we're asked to do a speaking thing at our kids' school. Maybe it's that we're starting a new gym workout routine. Like whatever it is for you, anytime that we start to feel uncomfortable, this sneaky irrational fear can come in under the radar and actually tell us all kinds of stories that feel really true, right? Like, oh, I should prepare for more for this. I don't have enough time, or I can't do that. It doesn't fit in my schedule, or, I don't know if they're going to say yes. So I have to come up with all these reasons why I have to convince them that they need this thing. These irrational fears wreak havoc on everything that is really true to us. Now, what I mean by that is when we're really in our place of our heart and we're leading from our desire, our irrational fear becomes quiet. But it's not to say that you don't have to navigate it. Now, there are all kinds of things that will happen when we come up against fear, right? Especially this irrational fear. And it will be things like everything will feel scary, or things will start to fall apart, or you'll start to second guess everything. And that's really this terror barrier that exists where it keeps us in this quote unquote safe zone. And again, it's not your fault. It's nobody's fault that this is happening. But when we have an awareness around it, then we get to choose differently. And that's really what this is all about. So when we're checking in with ourselves and we're starting to feel like, oh, this feels fun. This feels exciting. I want to do this thing. And then our brain comes up with all the reasons why we shouldn't. We really want to ask ourselves, like, which type of fear are we subscribing to? Is it this, rational fear that's actually really trying to protect us and keep us safe? Or is it this irrational fear that's being masked as a rational fear, So as you're going about your day, I would love for you to just consider, like, if you don't want to have the sales conversation, or if you don't want to have the hard conversation with your partner or your spouse or your kids, is it because your fear is telling you that it's life or death? It's something to consider, because you actually can override that. And there are ways that you can navigate this. And this is why helping people navigate fear and activate their confidence and courage is so important to me, because it affects every area of our life, right? It affects everything. It's our personal life. There's no such thing as just business or just personal or just, you can't compartmentalize like just being a mom or just being a business owner. It's everything. It's an and game, So the next time you feel yourself getting worked up, ask yourself, play a little bit, be a little curious. Can you be scare-sighted instead of paralyzed by fear, right? I like to bring some levity and playfulness into my work because it can feel so hard. It can feel so heavy when we start making things mean that all these things are going to happen, or it's such a, pivotal thing that if we get it wrong, then we're a terrible person, or nobody's going to like us, or all those things, right? So ask yourself the question, am I playing with the idea that this is a rational fear or an irrational fear? And if it's an irrational fear, how can I start telling myself and giving myself evidence that this actually is leading in the edge of my desire? This is where I'm meant to go. So that's what's on my heart today for today's quick intermission, supplement for your soul. I would love to know how it lands for you. If you want to continue the conversation, come on over to the Confident Creative Collective over on Facebook, and I will see you in the group. Talk to you soon. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to the Confident Creative podcast. I am so psyched that I got to have this conversation, and I loved sharing it with you. If you enjoyed it, I would love for you to hit subscribe to the podcast, and it would mean the absolute world to me if you could go ahead and leave a review about what your biggest takeaway was. If you want to come over and continue the conversation, join us in my free Facebook community, the Confident Creative Collective. We'll be diving into all different conversations from the podcast, as well as some additional trainings and some inside scoop. If you want to find me on the interwebs, you can find me on Instagram at keri.gavin, KERI.GAVIN, or you can find me on Facebook. Thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate you, and thank you for sharing this with anyone you think it resonates with. See you on the next episode.